was not smooth sailing just from the start. I did have a few bumps in the road. But honestly, it's like like when you suffer like the consequences of going over those bumps, if you will, I think that's what makes you realize like, oh, like I really have to get my stuff together and I gotta step up for myself.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Patient to Professional podcast. My name is Dr. Nick Despotidis, and I've had the privilege of examining thousands of children through the years. And what I found is many of them have interesting careers as adults. So I've decided to do this podcast so high school and college students listen to patients of ours and see if there's something that clicks within them that motivates them to pursue a similar career. So today, I'm so excited to have one of my long-term patients, Amanda Lee. Amanda, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story with our patients.
Very, very happy to be here, and definitely a long time patient of Dr. D. Been here since I was probably 14, and I'm 22 now, so it's been a long time.
Yes, to give you some background, Amanda came to me probably, like she said, as a middle schooler. We fit her with special contact lenses that help kind of correct her vision and also slow down her myopia. And recently she was she's much older, obviously, now, and she was in for an exam. And I said, so how are you, Amanda? And you're going to find throughout this episode how much energy Amanda has. And I said, I have to have you on. And she's been so generous with her time. So, Amanda, I'd like to start with where you are now. What is your career? What is your field right now? Let's start. What do you do for a living at this stage of your life? And how old are you?
Yes, so I am currently 22, and I work at J&J or Johnson & Johnson as a finance analyst. And basically, I manage the budgets for certain drugs at Johnson & Johnson.
Great. And how long have you been at J&J?
So I just started last July. So it's only been about 7 to 8 months. But it's definitely felt like a bit of a while now, if you will.
I know it seems like forever, but it hasn't been a year.
Yes, not a year.
And, before we talk about your path to this job, can you share with us, what do you love about it? You're smiling, and I remember in the exam room, you mentioned that you really enjoy what you're doing right now.
Yes. So honestly, I would say that the actual work portion of my job is not too bad. I think people, when they hear finance, they always think that like, oh, I'm calculating like a bunch of numbers and I'm like doing this projection, that projection. And while I do definitely forecasts for our budgets, a lot of the job for me specifically, at least in corporate finance, is honestly managing people's expectations, because the two sides that I have to kind of play in managing the budget is obviously the people that I work with, the teams, et cetera, they want to probably spend more or, spend a different amount. But then from my finance side, people want to, keep us to a certain target, to a certain budget. And so that's the two plays I kind of have to manage with, which is pretty interesting in my opinion, because it's honestly a lot more managing like people than it is doing like calculating numbers, if you will.
Yeah.
But I'd say I also really love the job just because the people at J&J are so fantastic. My first week there, I was literally talking to one of my friends, and I was like, I literally feel like to work in J&J, like just being a nice person is like a prerequisite, because everyone there is so nice and they're so personable. So I really love that.
So you're in charge of obviously a budget for a certain project, I'm assuming, right? Not the whole J&J.
No.
And you have to juggle. So this is very interesting. As a finance person, you're right. I would think you sit in front of a computer all day crunching numbers. But it really sounds like you have to juggle two opposing forces. People who need to spend money for the project that they're on, and finance people that say, no, this is all we have for the project. And if I understand you correctly, you're trying to set realistic expectations for both sides.
Yes. So, it's also a play because obviously in manufacturing a drug, you obviously have to you have to do certain things, right? There's FDA regulations, there's clinical safety regulations, there's all things you do have to do. So Partly I do advocate obviously for my partners, and if something really needs to be done, obviously we're gonna make sure we have the budget to do that. But at the same time, sometimes it's more just a question of, do we necessarily have to do this right now, or can we maybe push this off to a little bit later, if you will?
That's great. So, what does your typical day look like? Are you working virtually? Do you go into the office?
So currently we have a pretty flexible schedule, and we essentially do 3 days in office, 2 days work from home. And my day probably would look like, I probably go in around 8:45-ish. And in the mornings, I usually have meetings. I'm usually looking at budgets, probably working on requests that people have emailed me from the day before or the day of. And then in the afternoon, I also have more meetings usually, and then do some more budget analysis and whatnot, if you will.
So, you're doing meetings and you're doing crunching numbers, so to speak.
Yes.
Great. And you've only been doing this about a year. Is this your first job out of college?
Yes, this is my first job out of college. I will say being a new adult, like a full-time adult, is very interesting. And it's definitely been a learning curve in itself as well, if you will.
What makes it interesting is that there's no breaks, there's no summer break, Christmas break. What makes it interesting, somewhat interesting?
That was a bit of it was a little shock at first too, just, not being able to kind of really like knowing that you have a set time to kind of just do whatever you want. But the benefits at J&J actually are pretty nice. I do still have a decent amount of time to take time off, if you will.
That's great.
But I'd just say being an adult, like you gotta start paying taxes now. You gotta start making
Oh, yeah.
like big girl decisions. I also will say, I feel like back in college, you kind of could really decide the schedule for yourself. Like you can choose your class times,
Sure.
and you have a lot of time in between to do whatever you want. But as an adult, as I'm sure you know, Dr. D, now it's all about, I feel like, work and mostly, and kind of just, every single week you have a set time from Monday to Friday, like 9 to 5, where you have to be in like a certain professional mindset, if you will. Like you have to be really present for all
Yeah.
those hours. Whereas I feel like before in college, you could kind of just, it wasn't necessarily like that.
Yeah. Well, you have to be in a particular zone.
Mhm.
And I could tell you, being a little bit older than you, as it gets much better, because right now you have to prove yourself while you're learning the ropes. So
Yep.
you're juggling a lot of new things. Everything is new to you, this experience, the management style that you want to develop, and you're
Mhm.
trying to prove yourself within the company. And you're learning at the same time and actually doing a lot of technical work.
Yep.
As as it gets later on, you will be able to balance your life. But right now, it's, I guess, purposefully out of balance because your focus is on getting your career to launch.
Yes, of course. And honestly, I mean, even as a newbie, I will say I do think I have a great work-life balance, at least in my occupation at my company. I know some of my friends, they'll be like, and they work in IB or investment banking, if you will, and they'll be like, oh, I came home at 10 p.m. today. Like, what an early night for me. And I'm just like,
Wow.
oh my
So,
goodness.
okay, so let's stop right there because how did you get to where you are? Because finance, a lot of the patients that I examine now are majoring in finance, and I've come to realize that's a broad statement. So, why don't
Hmm.
you tell us a little bit about your high school thinking and where you went to college and how did this develop? Did you always know you wanted to go into this field, or
Hmm.
did it slowly evolve as you went through your academic career?
Yeah. So, as you can probably tell, I feel like I'm a very social person. I've always loved to just socialize and network, if you will, since I was younger. So in high school, I always knew I wanted to do business just because I love to interact with people. I really like to deal with working with people and whatnot. So in college, I already knew going in that I wanted to be a business major. I didn't know specifically what major it was going to
Okay.
be. But in taking all the, intro classes as a business major, I definitely thought finance was the only course where the textbook I thought was interesting to me. Like I
Huh.
actually read the textbook and I was like, wait, this is actually some interesting stuff here. Like I kind of want to know what's going on. And then as for why I decided to go into corporate finance during my junior year of college, I would have classes from pretty much like 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then I would also TA for grad classes afterwards from 6 to 8 p.m. And this to me was this to me is what represented what I felt like working in consulting or investment banking would be like, where you're just seriously, you're working from like morning to night. And doing that, I got so tired, like so burnt out. I felt like I had no time to take care of myself even. I was like, yeah, okay, the IB life or consulting life, I don't think is really for me because I really do need a work-life balance, and I really do value that. So that's what led me to just go into corporate finance in the end.
And where'd you go to college?
I went to Penn State.
Okay.
Penn State. Yeah.
And did you do internships?
Yeah. So I did an internship both my sophomore year and my junior year summer.
Okay. And were they in the investment banking or more of what you're doing now, finance, corporate finance, the internships?
Yeah. So my first internship, I actually did risk analysis. Because at first, before I came to finance, I thought I might be interested in risk analysis, but I did the internship, realized it was not for me. And I don't think I ever looked back since then. And then my junior year, I did do an internship in finance. And then that's when I was like, okay, yeah, this is what's for me.
Great. Was it a choice for you to go investment banking? Because a lot of people are going that way. Is there big, let's start basic because I don't know. Is a big salary difference between going into the investment banking or more corporate finance, what you're doing now? Was that a decision you had to make?
It was something I considered, for sure, right? But honestly speaking, I felt like for the amount of work you do and the pay you get, I don't know if it's something that I felt was would be reasonable, if you will. Like honestly, for the amount of work I do and the salary I get currently, I feel like it's a much better deal than what I would have gotten in in IB. Because I mean, in corporate finance, starting off, you'll probably make around like 80K to 90K, right? But then you will grow like each year, your salary will grow each year and it'll compound if you stay at the same company as well. But with IB, you start with six figures actually. You probably start around 100K to 110K, which is really cool. Like coming out of college, making that much money, you feel
yes,
it sounds awesome, right? But at the same time, like in consulting and IB, you're working like 80 to 90 hours a week. Like Monday to Friday, you can expect to be working. Like, you shouldn't really expect to have free time to yourself really during those days. Like, you have like meal times maybe, or you have, some time to work out here and there occasionally, but essentially you would be working like from day to night. Like, you probably won't get off until 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m. There's nights where you probably could be working till 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah. And now you're refreshing my memory because my oldest son, Nicholas, when he graduated, he did go into that field, IB. I don't know if it was a type of IB, worked for a big bank. And my wife and I were so happy because he was making six figures and he had the 401k. And like you said, all of a sudden he's coming home 11 o'clock at night and then getting up at 6 in the morning to get to the office by 7.
Yeah, which is insanity, in my opinion, at least.
But that's what this podcast is for. It may be right for someone, for my son and yourself, it may not. And luckily you got out quickly. But for other people, and hopefully we'll get them on this podcast, it may be right for them. There's no right or wrong.
True, definitely.
But if you were in that IB or investment banking position because of finances or some advice you got, I don't think you'd be on this podcast. You would be miserable, number one, and you wouldn't have enough time.
Yeah, I definitely don't think I would have the time for sure. But yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, certain people work better in IB where it's very fast paced, where it's very busy. And then other people like me just work better in corporate finance where you have a better work-life balance, in my opinion.
Okay. So this was very helpful. So what were the decisions that really helped you, or the milestones in your career? You said you were in high school. You've always been extroverted. Were you in clubs? Were you taking a lot of AP courses? Go back quite a few years now into that high school thing. Were you one that took a lot of AP courses, or were you taking drama or things like that? Bring us back then. Like, what milestone said, yeah, I don't belong behind the desk all day?
Yeah. So, I feel like back in high school, I did take a lot of AP classes, but I felt like I try to have a good balance of classes. Like I was taking mostly APs and honors classes, but To be honest, I thought they weren't too bad. So I think also your just like your appetite for learning and stuff can also have a play in, what you do and what you want to do. But even throughout high school, I played tennis, I did volleyball. I actually did do two plays in middle school. So, drama
Okay.
was
Very good. You had your drama side.
yes. But I mean, maybe it could be a family thing, but I feel like my family and I, we've always been very active. So, and I'm also the type of person where I can't sit straight, like sit still for
Yeah.
30 minutes
And
straight. Like I'm
that's,
always fidgeting around, moving around. I got to get up occasionally, like
yeah.
every now and then. Um, so I think just knowing myself, I knew I was not the type of person who could sit down for like hours and hours. And
Yeah.
hours.
And that's probably why you ended up at Penn State. My younger son went to Penn State and there was a lot of distractions there. So did you get distracted in college or was it a nurturing environment for you? Did it feed into your personality where there's always something to do?
Hmm.
In other words, how does a high school student choose a college? And what was it about that large Penn State environment that attracted you to that college?
Hmm. Honestly speaking, actually, Penn State, I ended up going there because I got into the Shire Honor School, and so with the in-state tuition and also the scholarship, it was honestly just the best financial decision
Okay,
for us.
very
So
important.
that's why I ended up at Penn State, and also has a really good business school. So that to me, with the financial stuff was just really, I think what set me up there as my final decision. And then going to Penn State, actually, there are a lot of distractions. I absolutely agree with you. But actually, I feel like that set me up better for the real world because once you hit the real world, there will also be a lot of distractions as well. Like it's not going to be like high school where you have everything set up for you. There's a bunch of structure, there's people watching you, like your parents are there to help you make sure you do your work, and there's teachers there to support you and whatnot. But it's kind of just like in real life where you kind of have to get like, you need to take yourself to class. You need to make sure you're doing your work. Like you need to make sure like you're studying for exams ahead of time and not cramming everything.
Yeah.
And I will say in the beginning, I did have a few distractions. It was not smooth sailing just from the start. I did have a few bumps in the road. But honestly, it's like when you suffer like the consequences of going over those bumps, if you will, I think that's what makes you realize like, oh, like I really have to get my stuff together and I gotta step up for myself because nobody else can step up for me except for myself.
Wow. That was just so powerful what you said, because as parents, we don't want to see our kids stumble. We want them to get A's and we want them to have, we're no longer helicopter parents. We're snow plowers. We plow the road for our kids. So everything is smooth and life just doesn't work like that. So that's a very interesting observation. You hit bumps and they weren't pretty, but yet somehow you feel they benefited you
Mhm.
by dusting yourself off, learning from your mishaps, and
Yeah.
now they're serving you well in real life when life does really kick you hard sometimes when you least expect it.
No, absolutely. And I will say, like, it kind of sucks that sometimes you kind of have to really like learn life's lessons to kind of really benefit the life lesson
Wow.
there. But I really do feel like if I didn't go through these like bumps in the road, I wouldn't, be where I am today, like truthfully speaking.
All right. That was such an important point. I hope our audience, certainly I got a lot out of it. Anything you would recommend to the student? Like if you now were listening to this podcast and you were 17, 18, what advice would you give your younger self, I guess is what I'm asking at this stage? Because it's easy for us as adults to say, oh, we got here and we're happy. But the road is as you just pointed out, is rough. The student who's applying to college or the student who's in college majoring but not sure if it's the right major for them, what advice would you give them?
So starting off with the major, I think totally fine if you don't know what you want to do when you go to college. Like we're 16, 17, and like we're asked to decide like the rest of our future just based on like a whimsical, like whatever you're interested in. So totally take your time finding out what you like in college. I didn't know what I wanted to do finance until literally my junior year of college. So totally take your time, like it's fine. I will say if you are interested in things, definitely get involved in clubs if you can that have to do with the major, because that will really kind of show you whether or not you would like the work that's in the field. And then also going back to high school, if there's one thing I do kind of regret slash that I wish I did more was kind of just get more involved in school, honestly. Obviously focus, do your studies, focus on your studies, make sure you're doing like the best that you can, but at the same time, don't forget to live your life. Like, truthfully speaking, now that I'm here as an adult, like you will be probably working for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you're young, definitely embrace your youth, like have fun, like don't forget to make friends and, make relationships that'll last you for the rest of your life. And even more importantly, getting involved in school, doing a bunch of activities, and even like doing plays and whatnot, like they'll help teach you a lot about like soft skills, like communication, dealing with people, like building relationships, like how to be polite and all these things. And that's actually really important because honestly speaking, I feel like I was able to get the job I have today, not because of my academics necessarily. I mean, that definitely played a part. Like that's like a basic stepping stone. But
yes,
the most important thing I thought was that I feel like I had good people skills and I could communicate, my strong suits about myself to the recruiter and speak in a way where they felt like I could be
yep,
best fit for the job and fit in the culture. Like
yep.
honestly, like because my one of my boyfriend's sisters, she's really stressed out about college right now, making sure she has
Angelina, yeah.
yeah, she's making sure she's, all good about the academics and she has
Mm-hmm.
like the resume stuff and whatever. And that's fair, like you do need those things. But even more importantly, like, do you have the actual people skills to be able to work like in society, like work in the corporate office setting, Because you can have all these skills. And I saw this at college as well, like super smart people, but they just don't have those people skills, to actually be able to work in a team, to work in an office setting, to clearly communicate with others. And I think that's why sometimes people kind of really struggle to find a job after college because I feel sometimes people only focus on the education part and the skills part, and they don't remember to also touch up on the people side as well.
Yeah. And that's a valuable lesson. It's easier for us to say because we live in nice communities. It's very competitive. There's always someone doing a little bit better on their SAT or taking one extra AP course or has one extracurricular activity than you do. So it's easy to get caught up in that treadmill, but you're 100% right because the EQ you can't study for. There's no tutor. There's
Mm-mm.
no course you can take. It's by getting involved, which is, as parents, we're always conflicted. We want our children to study, but we want our children to be well balanced. But if
Mhm.
they're well balanced, sometimes it's at the cost of their grades.
Yeah.
And so
So
as parents, we feel conflicted. You can't have it all, right? So
mhm.
I agree with you clearly from speaking to you this past, half hour or so. Your personality, if I was, this hiring agent, I'd hire you right away because you bring something much more than finance to our company.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that is a great lesson. I just wanted to acknowledge that it's easier said than done, but it's worth working towards,
Mhm.
both for the
Absolutely.
parents, by the way, and the student. Because
Mhm.
as parents, we get very nervous when our children are not studying because
Mhm.
we're afraid their grades will suffer. And if their grades suffer, they may not get into a good college. If they don't get to a good college, they're not going to have a good job. And if they don't have a good job, they won't be happy. But almost the opposite is true, isn't it?
Yeah, honestly. And it's funny even that you say that because so I actually was able to go back to Penn State last year as a recruiter,
Yes.
um, when I previously was the applicant the previous year. And the biggest thing that stood out to me about these applicants is like, listen, majority of the students are probably going to have good grades. They're going to be involved in something. They have some leadership stuff, right? But really, how they talk to you during, career fairs, during, when they walk up to you at the table, it really speaks a lot to the type of person they are. And like the biggest
Yes.
question that we recruiters are kind of looking for the answer to when we go to those things is, is this someone I can envision myself working with? Like, is this someone I would enjoy being in the office with?
Wow.
Yeah. And that really was kind of what separates you from the rest of the crowd because you're absolutely right. There's always somebody who could have more extracurriculars than you, that have a better grade than you. But the opposite is also true. So, at the end of the day, what really matters is the people connection, because that's who you're going to be working with.
So could you repeat that again? You visited your college, but this time as a recruiter, correct?
Yes.
And many people came to your booth. I mean, it's a huge company. I think it's worth repeating. What were you looking for when they gave you their CV? What were you looking for?
I was looking for how they presented themselves when they walked up. Were they confident in the way they spoke to me? Did they come prepared? Did they do their research? Did they have a type of personality that I felt like, would be good to work with? And obviously also, we're only talking to these people for a few minutes, right? So I'm not saying you have to, show your entire persona and like every single good trait about yourself, but it's just like, is this a person, at least from a brief look, like, do I think I could work well with this person? Would they fit well into our office culture? Exactly that.
Yeah. Amanda, you've exceeded my expectations. I don't have a crystal ball, but I've been doing this a long time. I think you're going to be successful in any path you take moving forward in every sense of the world, not just every sense of the word, not just career-wise, but I think life-wise. It's been an honor to be your doctor and your sister's doctor, but it really is even more of an honor to having you share your career, your early career with our patients. I know I've benefited from it as a parent, and I'm sure so many parents and students have benefited. So is there anything else you want to say at all? I just wanted to thank you very much. Any parting words at all?
Listen, my motto, ever since at least college is, like study hard, work hard, but party hard at the same time. Like live hard, but also work hard.
Oh boy, I don't know. I may have to edit that out. As a parent, we don't want to hear that. But anyway,
of course, responsibly.
I asked for it. Well, everyone, I think hopefully you've benefited as much as I have, learning a little bit about Amanda. I wish you the best of luck. And again, I couldn't be more grateful for you being a guest on the podcast.
Not at all. And I want to say thank you so much for, inviting me to this podcast and also doing this for your clients. I mean, this is amazing,
Yes, it's huge. In my career, I think it's one of the most valuable things I'm doing is sharing life experiences with my patients. And
amazing.
Certainly you've had a wonderful path.
Thank you, Dr. D.
All right. Thank you. Until next time, you have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
I'm Dr. Nick Despotidis, and in this podcast, I sit down with my current and former patients, people I've known since childhood, to talk about their careers, the challenges they faced, and the choices that shape their lives. I've always been intrigued by patients sharing their story with me in the exam room, and I came up with the idea of this podcast to share these gems with my current patients because I feel strongly parents and students can benefit from their peers' experience.